I just watched Supergirl expecting it to be an absolute disaster given the glowing reviews and spectacular box office results. And okay, I have to be honest, I was really excited to have Supergirl in the new DCU ever since it was announced a few years back. But the negative press once it came out made me worried that the movie was unwatchable. And now that I got a chance to go watch it, I have to admit, I actually liked it. And it's not the dumpster fire that the internet makes it out to be. Who would have thought that the internet can exaggerate things? But after I finished watching it and stepped out early since there's no post-credit scene, I asked myself, why is it getting so much bad press? Why are people treating it like it's the end of the new DCU, like something as franchise-shattering as The Flash? So today I'll share my answers and give you my personal thoughts on Supergirl. First off, we have to take a look at the competition in the box office right now. We have everyone's favorite It Should Have Ended at 3 franchise, Toy Story, as well as apparently Illumination's best movie so far, Minions and Monsters, both coming from massive franchises that are a lot more stable than DC Studios. And sure, Superman competed in the same month as Jurassic World Rebirth and Fantastic Four, while F1 and Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning were still in theaters, and it still broke even. And Supergirl right now is also under a shadow of Michael and The Devil Wears Prada 2, but because Superman had better reviews, it held up. And Supergirl got the short end of the cinematic stick. And sure, movies can coexist, and technically Supergirl has a different target audience given that it's a superhero movie. But sadly, here is where it gets much worse. Reviews were mixed, ranging from it's an okay movie to the classic no one cares argument online. And during the movie's marketing campaign, we kept hearing of the two cuts that were screened for test audiences, being the one made by the director and the one made by the studio. So this not only gave the movie a bad reputation before its release, but it also starts to shake the promise that was made at the start of the DCU where every script is perfect before going into filming. Now, this is not the first time a DC film carries this much baggage. In fact, it would be easier to say which one didn't carry it, but with Supergirl it's more concerning since, again, second film in James Gunn's new universe. Speaking of James Gunn, how can this movie feel like a Guardians of the Galaxy story without the actual director of Guardians of the Galaxy? Look, those are my all-time favorite Marvel movies. So I guess there's a bit of my personal bias for the intergalactic misfit crew trope, but this redundancy might have been one of the factors that led to a lack of audience enthusiasm, and for comic book fans, it felt like it's trying too hard to be like the Guardians, and not enough like the actual comic it's based on, Woman of Tomorrow. From some very specific scenes in space, till needle drops that are in no way as good as Star-Lord's Walkman. In fact, Kara even has a Walkman. You could tell that the director tried to copy the James Gunn style for a story that needed something different. In fact, he even said that he didn't even read the comic before making the movie. And I'm not gonna pretend I'm a comic book expert, but what I can say just by looking at the artwork is that the movie definitely needed more color, since the color scheme it does have does not align with what Superman established a year ago and what the new DCU is trying to establish to differentiate itself from the Snyderverse. I also find the fact that people call this movie consequential really funny in a time where superhero movies have to set up big events, so I guess standalone movies are a bad thing when DC does it now, apparently. Oh, and I also want to give props to the casting, since they definitely carried the movie. That's one of the main things I saw in sites like Rotten Tomatoes. I don't care what the internet says about Millie Alcock in the role. To me, she was great, and I'm happy that she's staying as Supergirl in the DCU, but I am sad that her debut wasn't the triumph that Kara Zor-El deserves. Jason Momoa as Lobo was long overdue. I'm glad he's here, and at my screening, the audience laughed every time Lobo talked, so much of what I saw in Deadpool and Wolverine. Oh, and it really was surprisingly likable, but I do feel like Ruthie's character arc was exaggerated, to make the villain look more evil. That's one of the things I found in my research of the One Up Tomorrow comic. And I don't have much to say about the villain Krem. Only that I'm kind of disappointed they did it, because I don't know, there was just something about him I didn't like that much, especially in comparison to how great Nicholas Hoult was as Lex Luthor. But even if I liked the cast, the characters themselves didn't have enough power to get people to the theater, and that's something we're seeing when secondary characters get the spotlight. So you can tell that James Gunn wanted to have mostly unknown or sideline characters coexist with the big powers, the big guns, if you know what I mean. Hence why Mr. Terrific got so much attention in Superman, or why Creature Commandos came before we even have a Batman set in this universe. You know, Supergirl reminds me a lot of The Mandalorian and Grogu, another movie I liked but the audience didn't really care about, to go watch. But both have that similar sci-fi western feel that I'm a huge fan of, yet both carry similar flaws like uneven pacing and, oddly enough, having to depower the main hero in order to keep the story and the other characters moving, and pairing that with massive budgets just adds more to the cinematic fire and the risk of failure, which is something that both movies are sadly going through. Now, after looking at all these factors, the new question is, should you give Supergirl a chance? My personal answer, it depends. If you like the Guardians and the James Gunn type pacing, you'll probably like it, but sadly, that's where it ends. You either like it or not. And that's sad, since Supergirl has a rich history that no movie has managed to capture so far. And when they do try harder, like with the CW series, the budget is limited. So when we get a high budget Supergirl, stuff like this happens. But thankfully, the studio is not being as reactionary as they were before, so for now, this isn't a massive franchise-killing catastrophe, but it's obvious the studio will focus on key characters before diving deeper with less recognizable leads. So hopefully it means we have a Wonder Woman back soon, but I still believe that Supergirl is a solid movie that deserves respect for trying to do its own thing, but it should also serve as a cautionary tale on why it's important to respect the source material and offer something new, especially now that the people are more critical than ever over what superhero movies they spend their money on. And that was my 2 cents on Supergirl. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I'd appreciate it if you like and subscribe. I have so many other movies to talk about, but let me know, what are your thoughts on Supergirl? Have you seen it? Are you planning to watch it? That's all for today. See you in the next video.
I have to make up an excuse to leave this party without anyone noticing. Bye.